You said on Get Up this week that the Russell Wilson-Pete Carroll relationship reminds you of the Brady-Belichick relationship. I'll give you the floor here. What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that?
Well, and the funny thing is, it's not necessarily the relationship that people think they know of Belichick and Brady of the last year, where a year ago there was a lot of talk about these guys needing to go through kind of the equivalent of marriage counseling. They needed to sit down and hash it out, and there was this expectation that the meeting was going to happen. That meeting never happened. The relationship was already dead. With Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson, I think the comparison is more like 7-8 years ago, Belichick-Brady, when it was never really all that great. Like, it was always this pretty cold relationship between them, but it worked. And they were able to weather some storms behind the scenes, certainly not as public as what we saw last year, nor as public as what Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson are seemingly enduring right now. But 7 or 8 years ago, when they were going through this, they had someone in Robert Kraft helping to sort of mediate. I think that Russell and Pete are now in that phase of their relationship, that 7 or 8 years ago relationship of Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. If they can weather this, if they can sit down and figure this out, they've got plenty of years together that they can still succeed. My question is, do they have somebody that can help mediate this, that can help both sides see some compromise? Because Paul Allen, the late Paul Allen, he was pretty hands-off even when he was around with the team. Now it's not even that. So my big hesitation about whether Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson can get through this is whether or not they have someone to help them do it. Well, there's a lot of egos involved, and I don't know.
Well, I've got Macklemore on in hour 3. Should I ask him? I mean,
you should ask him. I would be very curious to see what Macklemore is surprisingly, that guy's, you know what's funny, Rich? You want to hear a funny story?
Go for it.
I was, remember the NFC Championship game in Seattle?
Yeah.
The place was absolutely rocking. I'm on the sideline waiting to do our post-game interview. Macklemore's with his whole crew. They're playing Macklemore over the speakers, and he drops his keys, and he starts to, run out onto the field, and his keys are sitting there. I have to pick up his keys and, chase down Macklemore and be like, "Hey, bro, you dropped your keys." He's like, "Thanks, man." It was the most random run-in I've ever had with someone of that stature, and I feel like he was appreciative.
I think we're seeing a photograph of him celebrating with Russell Wilson after that very game. We're seeing on the screen right there. But
yeah.
I drop his name just not only promotionally, but just in a way to throw it into the next question. So what is on the agenda list of this marriage counseling? What is there? We could have always sensed what was between Brady and Belichick. Brady being like, "Hey, listen to me a little bit more," and Belichick saying, "Oh, I don't know what his 2 cents would possibly be." But what would be on the agenda list here? That's why they're in counseling. But what is the counseling here between Pete and Russ? What's on the list here to go through?
Not that very different from what you just cited. Hey man, you gotta. I just want you to listen to me a little bit more about this offensive line and what we got going here, and trying to fix it. Listen to what you think about what I like about this offense. It's not that different from what Brady was going through, and Brady, like Russell, is a really good soldier, the ultimate soldier, to be honest. So it's not like a malcontent. I think that a lot of times these organizations do need to realize, as Jason Light deserves a lot of credit. Jason Light last year, people want it to be like, "Oh, Tom's running the show in Tampa," and it's like, why? Because he's made some suggestions that Jason Light listened to. It is obviously a pretty thin line. You don't want to all of a sudden just allow your quarterback to be assistant GM. But if you have a longtime veteran who is obviously successful at their craft, maybe it's worth paying attention to them. And I think that would be Russell's argument. Now, Belichick, for instance, we joke, but he was basically like, "No, I'll handle it. You go do your job." Literally, do your job. And that weighed on the relationship. But again, Robert Kraft was there at times when it probably would have been too fractured to continue, to say, "No, Tom is our quarterback. He's sticking around. Bill, make this work." And they ultimately did. Again, who's going to do that for Pete and Russ. I don't know. That's my big question. Who is going to help mediate these egos through this situation to where there's some compromise on both sides?
Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.